G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at key knowledge points 337 and 338. That is Unit 3, Area of Study 3, and the 7th and 8th key knowledge points for this area of study. Today specifically, we're looking at strategies to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of operations that are related to waste minimization. This key knowledge point and the next, 338, are tied together because they both address strategies that can be implemented in business to minimize waste. As with the previous key knowledge points in this area of study, this key knowledge point, 337, and its partner, 338, specifically name efficiency and effectiveness as two criteria that these strategies aim to address and improve. I'll remind you that when we're talking about operations management, we're talking about the operations system, and every business has the same three key elements in its operations system: inputs, processes, and outputs. Where inputs are the resources you use to create your outputs are what you sell to your customers, and processes are however you make those inputs into those outputs. Efficiency is how you use those inputs. If you can operate your business to create your outputs using the bare minimum number of inputs, then you're operating a very efficient operations system. I've added a definition to this slide that wasn't present in our previous lessons, and that's because these key knowledge points specifically address the concept of waste. Our definition for waste is, as far as operations management is concerned, is inputs that either don't contribute to the creation of outputs or don't contribute to the creation of quality outputs. In either way, these inputs have been a waste and are waste. If you have to pay money for your inputs, for resources, for time, for energy, if you're paying salaries for employees that aren't required because there's not enough job for them to do, or you're buying inputs that don't get used because there's defects in your operation system and you have to throw out faulty goods, that is waste. And these two key knowledge points, 337 and 338, specifically address waste as a concept. Now, before we dive into how to prevent waste and how to minimize waste, let's talk about waste a little bit. An acronym I like to use with my students is the acronym TIMWOOD, which you can see on your screen now. This is a helpful tool, an acronym, a helpful mnemonic device to remember the different sources of waste in operations management. For example, the first T in TIMWOOD, or the only T in TIMWOOD, stands for transportation. It would be wasteful to be moving things from place to place if it doesn't have to be moved. Consider if you've got two factories and you need to move goods from one place to the other place, or you've got employees who split their time between the two places mid-shift, they're going to be transporting from one place to the other. It's going to cost fuel, it's going to take time. Likely, if you're transporting goods, you're going to have employees, labor, to be moving that good, and you're paying for that time. If you can eliminate unnecessary transportation, you will save a lot of resources. Inventory is another source of waste. We talked about materials management strategies earlier in this area of study, and we defined then that storing goods in unnecessary volumes costs money, time, and resources that can be eliminated if you don't store excess goods. There's motion, similar to transport, but we're talking more within a place. Let's say you are responsible for screwing the caps onto tubes of toothpaste in a factory, a very basic job. If those tubes of toothpaste are stored 1 meter away from you on your right, and the caps are 1 meter away from you on your left, you're going to have to be moving back and forth between these two stations, and that's unnecessary motion. That's going to be taking time and creating work that doesn't need to be done, which is wasteful. Then there's two O's in TIMWOOD. Overproduction is producing excess output that exceeds demand. Think about fidget spinners. We probably all remember fidget spinners. They were very cool, very trendy for a little while, and then suddenly they weren't. And there were shops everywhere that had massive supplies of fidget spinners that all of a sudden they couldn't sell, and they likely ended up just throwing them out. The investment they made to purchase those fidget spinners was totally wasted by the fact that they had excess inventory that exceeded demand. So that's overproduction. And then there's overprocessing. Let's say, for example, you include a lot of quality steps in your operations system. You're adding diamonds, you're preparing 19 different colors of this product. Let's say the product is a lunchbox, and you're adding diamonds, you're gold plating it, you have it branded by Versace. The target market for lunchboxes are probably not going to value that kind of investment. And what you've in fact done is wasted a lot of money creating a product that is much higher quality than it ever needed to be. Certainly, if you're talking about a camping chair, it's pretty common for manufacturers to include a cup holder in a camping chair. If you include 16 cup holders, you're probably over-processing that product. You're including features that don't add value to the customer. They're just adding features that customers don't necessarily want or need. That's over-processing. And finally, defects. If you're making mistakes, accidents do happen, but when they happen, that can damage inventory. It can create outputs that don't meet your minimum quality requirements, and you throw them in the bin. Defects are mistakes, and where mistakes happen, waste is created. So, as far as any question that you get on a SAC or an exam that asks you about waste minimization or lean management or any of the terminology from these key knowledge points, I want you to think first of the acronym TIMWOOD and look at your case study if you have one, and try and work out what are the potential sources of waste in this case study that you can address with strategies, because the strategies we're about to talk about aren't necessarily all applicable for all of the different types or different sources of waste. Now, waste minimization strategies are any efforts made to reduce the amount of resources discarded in operations. If you are spending time to do things unnecessarily, or you've invested financial resources in purchasing resources and inputs that you didn't need in the end, if you are having a lot of defects, there are a lot of mistakes in your production, and you're throwing out a lot of low quality or damaged goods before they can ever reach a customer, you're creating lots of waste. And any efforts to stop that from happening, any efforts to minimize waste, are called waste minimization strategies. Reducing waste is inherently related to efficiency. If efficiency is using fewer resources to create your high quality outputs, minimizing waste will help you use fewer resources. So by definition, waste minimization goes hand in hand with efficiency. Of course, if we want to link this to effectiveness, there are other objectives, other goals that waste minimization can achieve for operations management, including improving the quality of processes, helping source higher quality materials, certainly recruiting and training highly skilled employees is going to help minimize waste, and that's going to help achieve objectives with regards to the quality and capability of human resources. Implementation of technology will help minimize waste, and it will certainly help achieve other objectives also. And then certainly recycling materials will help minimize waste and probably help you minimize costs associated with operations. So there are all sorts of objectives that also benefit from efforts to minimize waste. Now, the core tenets of waste minimization are reduce, reuse, and recycle. You've probably heard these over and over again. I think they make up a significant portion of Sesame Street viewing, and I'm pretty sure I got this messaging through Play School as a child. But reduce, reuse, recycle are very important tenets to keep in mind, these core principles, if you are thinking about operations management and waste minimization. When we're talking about reducing, we're talking about decreasing the number of resources discarded. By extension, this is about reducing the number of resources required for operations management. If you can use less time, less effort, and less money to produce high quality outputs, then you should be seeking to do that. That would be reducing. Reusing is making use of inputs that would otherwise be discarded. So if you can find a way to, instead of throwing things out, if you can find a use for those things, then that's reusing. And certainly recycling is finding new purpose for things that otherwise didn't have a function in your business. So transforming waste products or transforming defective products and giving them a new purpose is recycling. Let me give you some examples of how reducing might take place in a business. One simple thing we can look at is implementation of technology. If you implement technology to reduce the amount of workforce you require, if you implement automation in your production line, that will save financial resources that are spent on wages. It will save time, and it will prevent defects because you're no longer preparing for the human element and accidents and mistakes that humans can make in your production line. And certainly if you implement materials management processes like master production schedule and materials requirement planning, you can ensure that you've got a very clear list of all of the inputs required to conduct your operations so that you're not making mistakes purchasing more than you need. A more specific example might be using something like solar-powered motion-activated lights in your work sites or in your factories, in your warehouses. These devices, obviously they're solar-powered, so you don't have to pay for the electricity to power these lights. And motion-detected lights means that they'll only be on when an employee is moving within their sphere of influence, lighting the way for that employee to see what they're doing, and then they'll turn off again once that employee is no longer in an area that needs to be lit by this lamp. So the amount of energy it's actually using will be decreased simply because it's activated as needed. Now, reusing is pretty common across industry, even industries that aren't necessarily famous for being environmentally sustainable or fighting waste are known to use the principles of reuse because it can save them a lot of money. Examples of this might be cafes that prefer to use recyclable cups. Some cafes that I go to have a discount on the coffee if you supply your own cup, a keep cup or a reusable cup, rather than using disposable cups. This serves the dual functions of meaning that this business isn't creating waste through handing out disposable cups, but also the business can save money not buying buying disposable cups that they then need to hand out to their customers. So it's sort of a bit of a win-win in that sense for the business. And a more specific example would be Carlton United Breweries are famous for giving kegs of beer to bars and pubs and things like that. And then when they deliver the next set of kegs, they'll collect their empty kegs, take them back to the factory in Abbotsford, the brewery in Abbotsford, clean them out, give them a good wash, and reuse them. And you can see just in this picture, there's a picture of some Carlton United kegs. Some of them are in pretty good condition. You can see some of them have had quite a long life so far, and they might be coming to the end of their life, but Carlton United's pretty committed to reusing their kegs for as long as they can. And then there's recycling. The concept of transforming waste into something new might be a little bit foreign to you. You might not be able to think of an example off the top of your head, so take these two. These are both really good examples. The first is that Ben & Jerry's ice cream factory, at least one of their ice cream factories, is almost entirely powered by a biodigester, which is a kind of energy production system that uses wastewater and organic waste to create electricity. And in this case, the organic waste that the bacteria is fed on that operates this biodigester generator is their waste ice cream. And it's traditionally understood that confectionery is a particularly wasteful industry. There's often oversupply. It's very difficult to make an exact number of liters of ice cream to fill a number of containers. Things can go wrong in production, and if they go wrong in production of confectionery goods, it's often very hard to reverse that process and take corrective action to restore the production. So Ben & Jerry's make good use of their waste output from their ice cream factory, and they use it to create electricity to power their ice cream factory. It's really quite genius. And Carlton United Breweries, again, for another example, they often have broken glass as a waste product from broken bottles in transit and in operations. It's just a byproduct of working with glass. Well, they actually collect all that broken glass and melt it down and recast it into bottles that then can go back into production. So that broken glass takes on a new life as recycled glass for bottles. Now, the principles of lean management are what the next key knowledge point, 338, has you focus on. Lean management, a little bit like total quality management that we spoke about previously, is a holistic approach to business. It's a philosophy. It's not in and of itself a strategy. You can't implement lean management in the same way that you can implement quality control. But implementing lean management comes with it a whole bunch of different strategies that you might apply in your business. Certainly, lean management as a philosophy is about empowering employees and equipping them to think of what they do as contributing to quality and to waste reduction, waste minimization in the business, and helping everyone to look for efforts that they can take to maximize customer value. So if that's finding areas where costs can be cut through defect prevention or through increased efficiency, that's good. Or if it's identifying steps that can be taken to actually increase the value of the good or service that you're delivering to the customer through improving its quality without increasing the cost. So lean management isn't inherently about reducing waste only. It might be that as part of lean management, you decide on the 2 or 3 things you're going to do to ensure that your outputs are particularly attractive to customers, so that you're not wasting time doing 9 or 10 things to make this lunchbox gold and diamond encrusted. Definitely lean management, if implemented correctly, if you are adding customer value while reducing waste, you'll be improving efficiency and you'll be improving effectiveness in many ways. Now, the Key Knowledge Point 338 lists 4 strategies that can be implemented in business related to lean management. The previous study design, which is not one you need to worry about, referred to the strategies that can be implemented in lean management as principles of lean management. And it might be that your teacher continues to refer to the strategies of lean management as the principles of lean management. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the current study design, the one that is relevant in the time that I'm making this video, refers to strategies, and so that's the terminology you should defer to if you can. The first strategy listed in the study design is pull. And this is, if you remember our materials management strategies, and you remember the just-in-time materials management strategy, where inputs only arrive at operations right as they're needed, this is kind of how pull works. Pull means that demand drives production. So your business only goes into production when an order is placed, or when you can define an increase in demand. Car manufacturers are pretty good at this. Toyota almost invented this system, and they very much invented the just-in-time materials management strategy. But very much, if you go to a Toyota dealership and place an order for a new car, and you choose your color, and you choose the added features that this vehicle might have, well, then the Toyota manufacturing plant will receive an order for a car in the specifications that you have chosen, and they will launch production of your vehicle, and it will be created and shipped to you when it's ready. This means that brands like Toyota are saving a lot of time and effort and money not producing cars that they might not sell. Then there's one-piece flow. This is about achieving a steady flow in production. Essentially, what we're trying to do is eliminate starts and stops, because if things are starting and stopping, there will be a point where goods on the production line or employees are waiting for the next thing to happen. And if you're waiting for something to happen, you're probably wasting time. So if we can have one piece flow through your entire operations system, inputs go through processes and they become outputs, and there wasn't any stopping and waiting at any point, we have been excellently efficient. We have eliminated waiting from our processing. Then there's takt, or takt time. It's a measure of time between the completion of one output and the completion of the next output. Ideally, this should be as close together as possible, as long as you're not oversupplying demand. So, ideally, for any operations manager, keeping a close eye on demand. Certainly, if you implement pull, you'll probably operating only when demand increases. But your takt time should be as short as possible without being shortened at the expense of increasing defects or risking oversupply. And certainly, finally, 0 defects. It is what it says on the tin. Stop making mistakes. If you can remove errors from production, then you won't have any defective outputs that need to be thrown away. If you don't make mistakes, you don't need to worry about fixing mistakes. And if you can prevent mistakes from happening at all, That is the best way to improve your efficiency in operations. In summary for these two key knowledge points, waste in all its forms is a barrier to the achievement of business objectives. It costs money, it costs time, it costs labor. Waste is a cost that doesn't need to be paid for. Waste minimization strategies do exist, and you can implement waste minimization in your business to eliminate that waste. Now, if you are an operations manager and you're looking to minimize waste, reduce, reuse, and recycle should be the core philosophy that you're applying to your thinking. If you can reduce the number of inputs needed, good. If you can reuse things in your operations system, good. And if you can recycle waste to take on some function, so it's not just thrown away, good. And it might be that one of the ways that you look to implement waste minimization in your business is you adopt a lean management philosophy. And we've spoken about 4 strategies that can be implemented as part of lean management. Those are pull, one-piece flow, takt, and 0 defects. That's all for today. See you next time.